Welcome back to another episode of the Speakeasy Health Podcast, where we speak about hormone health topics in an easy way. I'm Roxy and I'm your host, and in today's episode, we're going to be talking about the role insulin resistance plays in getting more painful cycles, low energy and low mood, that feeling of fatigue and kind of like a foggy curtain that keeps you from being able to focus properly throughout the day, and even the connection that it has with you gaining or losing weight or the ability to do so. We're going to cover all of this in today's episode, so stay tuned to learn more. Blood sugar stability, inflammation, and weight have been topics that have caused a lot of fear because what we tend to do on social media is we take something out of context, or we summarize a few articles or a post of a doctor and we just make a post of our own, and that is supposed to be giving a lot of knowledge to the person reading it. Unfortunately, that actually can cause more fear than good when taken out of context, and this is what's been happening in the past couple of years on social media. Fear-mongering has been at its highest due to the fact that people have taken what blood sugar imbalances actually mean out of context. And today in this episode, I actually want to walk you through where the blood sugar imbalances come from, what is insulin resistance, and what is actually the hormone insulin, because if you ask a lot of people, they will not know that actually blood sugar imbalances are in relation to insulin and what is insulin and the role that it plays. And to be honest, blood sugar imbalances and blood sugar, not imbalances, let's not call them imbalances, but blood sugar instability, and I might be crucified for saying this, it's actually a normal thing that happens in your body, just like your period coming every month, just like getting headaches when you're dehydrated. It's just your body's way of carrying its processes and just letting you know that either something is off or something is just being conducted in the way that your body just does things. I don't want you to fear these topics anymore, and for that reason, in today's episode, I want to educate you on a couple of things. First of all, I want to talk to you about what is insulin resistance and how it truly forms over the years, and the impact that it can have on our cycle, and at what part of our cycle we should be more conscious of the impact insulin can have on our blood sugar levels. Then I want to talk to you about cortisol. In relation to weight, I want to talk to you about cortisol and the role it has in this whole equation. And finally, I want to chat to you about understanding what part diet can play in our overall health when it comes to blood sugar imbalances, and can it help us reduce the pain of our cycle if we use diet to our advantage, and some practical methods in which you can achieve this. The topics I've mentioned are quite common and are very frequent questions that I get asked by my audience or friends and family. So there's quite a few things to cover here and unpack. So let's just dive straight into it by starting to talk about what is insulin resistance, and the connection it has to blood sugar imbalances. So what is insulin resistance? Before we speak about the concept of insulin resistance, I think it's important to take a step even backwards and try to understand what insulin, the hormone that is a key part to this whole process, actually is. So let's talk about the hormone first, and then we're going to speak about the concept of insulin resistance and how it develops over time. So insulin, the hormone, is produced by our pancreas. Our pancreas is a key endocrine gland. Endocrine glands are basically our main glands in the body that produce hormones. And insulin is secreted by our pancreas. The role that insulin plays in our body is to bring blood sugar levels down after we've eaten a meal that can be transformed from carbs into sugars for energy for the body to use. This can be everything apart from fiber, because fibers, we do not have the digestive enzymes to digest fibers. That's why a lot of influencers will tell you, and a lot of people that actually mean good, and I'm one of those people. I do mean good when I say this, so I just have to choose to believe that other people that tell you this also mean good. So why people tell you to eat fiber is because fibers cannot be digested by our gut bugs, and that means that the absorption of the foods that can actually be transformed into sugars to be used for energy is actually, the conversion is much lower because the fiber kind of gets in the way of that. Insulin starts being released the second that we start eating, that we take a bite of our food. The reason for that is that digestion begins in the mouth, and the enzymes that are being released, the enzymes that help us digest the food once we take a bite from it, are talking to the pancreas to tell it that ahead of the food incoming, it needs to start releasing this hormone insulin to bring the blood sugar level down if by any chance it goes way too up, so it doesn't stay high for too long. Having blood sugar levels that stay high for too long is where the damage comes in. But if you don't have diabetes, these levels of blood sugar will go back to normal within a 2-hour range. Now, the reason why we want this sugar from foods, and we shouldn't really try so hard to make it not happen, like to make it like it's a non-existing process, is because when you have this sugar in your bloodstream, your body uses it for energy. It sends it to your muscles so you can move, it sends it to your key organs so you can live, and overall just do everything with energy. So next time you hear someone telling you that blood sugar spikes are evil, you should never allow your body to experience that, tell them that you like your organs working as they are, and you like energy in your muscles so you can train, work out, play with your kids, and do all the activities that you want with energy. One thing we don't want to happen here is that the blood sugar stays in the bloodstream and doesn't get sent out to our main organs and muscles to function well, but instead it stays in the blood, and that can happen for 2 reasons. One, a lot of insulin is being released constantly over time because you're having meals that are way too frequent, stimulating the digestion to start in the mouth and the enzymes to talk to the pancreas, like I explained earlier. And that means repeated bouts of insulin being released and a lot of blood sugar in the system to have to be cleared out. And this over time can lead to insulin resistance, meaning a degraded quality of insulin. Another reason for the blood sugar to stay in the bloodstream and not being cleared out is because you already have a condition like type 2 diabetes. Type 2 diabetes is something that over years and years gets to this level that the insulin is being degraded. So initially it could have started with your insulin gets cleared out, your insulin clears out blood sugar level pretty well, and then over time, because you have too frequent meals, or because maybe a genetic component, because type 2 diabetes can be inherited, but it's the diet also plays a significant role into it, your insulin quality can be degraded over time, and then it can allow the blood sugar level to stay in the bloodstream for too long, causing inflammation and not allowing it to get cleared out, to be sent to your organs and to your muscles so you can function with the energy that we spoke about earlier. There's a third possible way in which the blood sugar doesn't get cleared out of the bloodstream, which is you are born with type 1 diabetes, which means your pancreas doesn't produce insulin at all. It never has produced it. It never had or it produced it, but it never had the quality to clear out the blood sugar levels from the bloodstream. So you always depended on insulin. So there are these 3 instances in which you can either have a very good insulin quality from the get-go, but then you perhaps don't eat a lot of fiber or balanced meals, or you eat too often, in which case your blood sugar levels is always kind of high and pancreas has to always release insulin. And then over time it goes into the stage where the pancreas cannot keep up and cope with these demands of insulin being released constantly and all the time, so the insulin quality degrades, descending into type 2 diabetes. Or the third option is you've never really had the ability to clear out the blood sugar levels from the bloodstream because of type 1 diabetes. In all instances, there is an inflammatory component to blood sugar levels being high at all times. But in a normal person, once you eat something, it's gonna get cleared out within 2 hours. As long as you add fiber, protein, and good quality fats to every meal, 80-90% of the time, you are going to be more than fine. So worrying about it can actually increase cortisol levels, and can influence your pancreas to produce even more insulin when it's not needed or not produce enough. So stressing about this, not helpful. If you have type 2 diabetes or type 1 diabetes, that is different when it comes to the life adjustments that you need to make. However, if you're a healthy individual and get blood sugar spikes as a result of eating some food, just do better in the next meal. In addition to the fear mongering around inflammation in relation to blood sugar levels staying high for too long, we also hear that if blood sugar levels are staying high for too long, we can be exposed to premature aging and irreversible damage. And these are often terms referred to as glycation or browning, eventually leading to cell death. Let me reassure you that if you don't have diabetes, the chances of premature aging happening as a result of you eating a piece of cake is small to none. And the reason for that is, for someone that doesn't have diabetes and has a good insulin quality, or doesn't have a genetic predisposition to type 2 diabetes, or doesn't have type 1 diabetes, the blood sugar levels are going back down within 2 hours of you eating that meal. And if you don't eat again for another few hours, which you shouldn't if you've incorporated fats and carbs and protein in your previous meal, you shouldn't be feeling hungry until 3 or 4 hours after. That's enough time for that insulin level to bring the blood sugar level down, and there's no need for insulin for another 2 or 3 hours until you have your next meal. So the chances of that happening are small to none. What could potentially happen if you haven't properly incorporated the right amount of fats and fiber in your previous meal is you could feel sluggish, you could get into that afternoon slump, you could feel a bit foggy and dizzy and having a bit of a difficulty to concentrate, kind of like the curtain over your eyes that I mentioned earlier. That's how you could be feeling, but in no way, shape or form you are going to prematurely age if you're having a blood sugar spike. It's just not going to happen. You can mitigate the low energy and the feelings of fogginess by using diet to your advantage. That's why I say that in every practice that I engage with my client, nutrition is key, because most often than not, 90% of your problems are gonna go away if you match your nutrition with what your body is currently needing, basically. So if anything, that's what you should be focusing your attention on, not spending hundreds of pounds on CGMs and meal plans and apps and 50 pounds on a bag of seeds that contains all the vitamins and nutrients. 1 or 2 euros or 2 pounds for a bag of pumpkin seeds on every other meal throughout the day is going to do much more for you than a glucose monitor can. And I say this, and I think about myself a couple of years ago that I used to be crazy about tracking my blood sugar levels, and it became so unhealthy at one point that the stress caused by putting a CGM and looking at my app all the time became counterproductive, and it actually made me more anxious about my meals and about food, and it just descended into me being super anal about having certain meals at certain times and being very restrictive, and it just overall it wasn't a great relationship that I was having with food. So having a diet that is rich in fats, dietary fiber and protein, and colorful and plenty of veggies throughout the week will do more for you than any other device. Now that we understand what blood sugar levels are and the role of insulin plays and what is insulin resistance, I want to tell you at which part of your cycle you should pay a bit more attention to your diet when it comes to managing blood sugar levels better, and that is your luteal phase. During luteal phase, women become less insulin sensitive, meaning if you'd have the same meal in your follicular phase, which is day 1 to 14 of your cycle, roughly, and you'd have the same meal in your luteal phase, your blood sugar response would be different because the insulin quality reduces a little bit in your luteal phase. So what that can mean, and the reason why this is important to mention, is strictly because in relation to more painful cycles. One component of having beautiful, regular, painless cycles that can keep you from achieving that can be inflammation. And it is true that when blood sugar levels are high at all times, like as I mentioned earlier, if you eat 5-6 times a day, you eat every 2 hours, you don't really give your blood sugar levels a chance to go down and the insulin to do the job. And a lot of insulin in the body at all times, that can cause inflammation indeed. Let me put it this way, can raise inflammatory markers in the body. And with inflammatory markers raised in the body, that can cause hormone-like chemical that gets released in the second part of your cycle called prostaglandins to release more of that. And more of prostaglandins means essentially more contractions of the uterus when you're bleeding. And the reason for that is that prostaglandins attach to the lining of your uterus and making the uterus contract. So when you're shedding, when you're having your bleed, your uterus contracts to release that bleed. And more prostaglandins, it means they attach to the lining of the uterus more, and more of those can cause more painful, more frequent contractions. And those contractions are your cramps that are giving you the pain around your cycle, around your bleed, that we want you to get rid of. So paying more attention to your blood sugar level in the second part of your cycle. Of course, throughout the cycle would be ideal, but if there's any point of the cycle that you're gonna have to choose to pay more attention to, would be during the second part of your cycle. And that can help make the cycle less painful. When it comes to reducing inflammation from that point of view, at least there's multiple ways in which your cycles can be more painful. And if you're interested to find out the multiple aspects on how your cycle can be more painful and how to tackle them, you can contact me and we can talk about how we can work together to help you, support you through that. A lot of my clients come to me with painful periods and we understand the root cause and we fix it, and they have beautiful, painless, regular cycles after that. Alternatively, you can also join Hormone, where you get the same method that I use in my one-to-one client work. I'm gonna leave the link in the description of the episode, so you can join the membership, where you also get my guidance and bi-weekly questions with me and support from the community and guest experts coming to talk to you about any topics that you might want to speak about. I would like to share a couple of practices that are staples in my clients' habits and mine as well when it comes to managing blood sugar levels better in the second part of your cycle. And it's not going to be as hard as you think it is. So here is 2 main tips that I can offer you. One is to start incorporating more fiber in your diet. That can be before meals or after meals. You can have a snack. My favorite one is hummus and celery stick before a meal. And the second thing that you could do is you can start incorporating some teas in your diet that can help with a better secretion of insulin and clearance of blood sugar levels from the bloodstream. So these 2 teas that I recommend, and they're my favorite, are mulberry leaf extract and cinnamon tea, or just adding cinnamon on some apples and peanut butter. So these 2 have been proven to help support with managing blood sugar levels, and they're a great addition to have, and it's just a delicious habit to start incorporating in your diet, and not just necessarily in the second part of your cycle, but it can be throughout the month. But by far the best thing that you can do for your cycle health and your energy levels is to diversify your diet. Inside Hormone, my premium membership, you have access to a deep dive diet analysis, as well as access to a plan tracker to improve your plan count every month, and dozens of recipes that will allow you to support this goal. They're all super easy to make, and every month I drop more mini cookbooks that you can choose from. So it all feels supportive for you and focus on exactly what you need to be adding in your diet. You can join today, starting with 1 month and no long-term commitment, and check if you love it. So now we know that blood sugar levels impact our energy levels, our pain levels, inflammation, and cycle health. But what is the connection between cortisol and weight gain? It turns out that inflammation, cortisol, and blood sugar levels have an intimate connection, and they work together. So when one of them is off, this can be leading as a consequence to weight gain or inability to lose weight. And this is how the cycle goes. We start with elevated blood sugar levels, prolonged elevated blood sugar levels, which causes inflammation to raise, which stresses the body. And when the body is stressed, our adrenal glands release more cortisol, which is the stress hormone. When cortisol gets released more than normal, it stimulates the body to release stored glucose. When stored glucose is released, which is sugar, our blood sugar levels stay elevated. When our blood sugar levels stay elevated for too long, inflammation causes stress, cortisol stored glucose, high blood sugar levels. It's a cycle. It's a cycle that we have to break in order to be able to lose weight or in order to be able to stop gaining weight. A lot of my clients, for example, they come to me telling me that my diet hasn't changed, but I keep gaining weight, especially in my midsection, or just overall, I just keep gaining weight. And the reason why is because of this inflammation cycle. That's what I call it, an inflammation cycle that we need to break it. And the way to break this cycle is by focusing on a very simple thing. We don't have to make it complicated. Just focus on adding more fiber in your diet. This in turn will support lower inflammation, and where the inflammation is lower, there's not going to be more stress in the body. So we break that pattern between inflammation and cortisol. And if the cortisol is not being released more than it needs to, stored glucose is also not going to be released anymore. So no more elevated blood sugar levels. It starts with fiber and with a diverse diet. To end this episode, I would like to get into one more topic or continue the topic of cortisol, because I would like to tell you why cortisol actually makes you gain weight, because I feel like you hear a lot, one of the symptoms of weight gain is cortisol, or cortisol is the reason why you gain weight, but you never are told why that happens. So I would like to explain it to you. Prolonged elevated cortisol levels send our body into flight or fight mode, meaning our body interprets this as quote-unquote imminent danger. And this is not your fault, because this is what we evolutionarily evolved to do due to thousands of years of food scarcity and being chased by predators. And today, when you get an email from your boss or you get into a fight with a significant other, your brain doesn't distinguish between that being a lion or that being an email from your boss. And it does what it evolutionarily was taught to do to survive, which is entering fight or flight. So what fight or flight does is it takes away energy coming from food, from your brain and organs, and stores it in an area that is very easily accessible when it needs to tap into for resources, which is your belly. That is why we can recognize cortisol weight gain or inability to lose weight by measuring the circumference of your belly. And that is why the circumference of your belly is also a vital indicator of health, because the fat stored in your midsection is actually visceral fat on your organs, and that is the most dangerous type of fat because it can inhibit the way that organs are supposed to be functioning. In the inflammation cycle that we spoke about earlier, if blood sugar imbalances are the reason why you're having inability to lose weight or you keep gaining weight, incorporating more fiber and diversifying your diet is the way to break that cycle and finally get to the healthy weight that your body is supposed to be at without the excessive danger of accumulating fat around your vital organs in your midsection. If you enjoy what you learn on the podcast here today, please leave a review and give me your honest opinion, because I always want to improve and talk about topics that you're interested about, and also share it with a friend that can benefit from it. And don't forget to subscribe so you can be the first one to know when the new episode drops. See you in the next episode.